Today, I'm announcing a dream come true, the most exciting development ever on my personal training journey, made possible by engagement with the community here on YouTube. Current climbing training operates on a fundamentally flawed premise. The mainstream approach attempts to balance effective training with injury avoidance, creating what I call the injury avoidance trap. Common training advice oscillates between ineffective, low RPE junk volume and injury-prone heavy repeaters on non-ergonomic tools. This results in a cycle of injuries and setbacks that essentially lead to a balance that is a grinding long-term plateau. This methodology functions like Bulgarian weightlifting. It is a sorting mechanism that identifies genetic talent rather than developing it. It is effective at grinding through populations to find the naturally gifted, but it fails to transform average athletes into elite performers. If you emerge with your tendons still attached to your bones, it's because almost anything would have worked for your gifted genetics. My climbing trajectory followed this usual pattern. Like most climbers, I experienced the initial rocket ship phase, rapid progress in those first few years. This was followed by the inevitable plateau with occasional harder ascents when conditions aligned. I convinced myself, like many people do, that minor variations in performance indicated progress, when statistical analysis would have shown that I was simply experiencing a normal dispersion around a stable mean. The harsh reality was that I had reached my genetic ceiling using conventional methods. What makes my case study relevant is what happens next. In the history of Nova Scotia climbing, no climber has ever transitioned from this long-term intermediate level plateau to make a single contribution to hard climbing locally. This represents an iron law of athletic performance across all sports. If you haven't achieved elite status within your first decade, in the vast majority of cases, you never will. After 10 years of grinding through every imaginable training program, managing the chronic injuries that result, I reached a decision point personally. Send it or end it. I came very close to ending it. However, as it happens, I took a different path. I rented a storage locker. I built a moonboard inside of it, and I set to work developing grippers and training protocols. Among friends, this became known as the storage locker days, a metaphor for serious dedication under austere conditions. This systemic approach produced unprecedented results. I did the impossible. I transitioned from a middle-of-the-pack intermediate climber to having one of the most accomplished tick lists in Nova Scotia history, setting the standard for hard climbing locally.
Oh, I'm so pumped. Ah! Ah!
I am now second only to my good friend Ben Smith for the most first ascents graded 8A and above in Nova Scotia climbing history.
Woo! Ah! Mother. Ah!
Together, our ascents represent 95% of climbing here at that level. I didn't just climb my own lines. I also completed more hard second ascents than any climber in Nova Scotia history. I have 40 notable second ascents, including long undone test pieces, intimidating high balls, death landings, and desperate projects that stood undone for a decade despite attempts from the area's strongest local climbers. This wasn't incremental improvement or feeling stronger on moves. This represents what we call the evolved Pokemon form, a complete transformation where previous projects become trivially easy and they seem like quaint relics of a former performance level. I started the GripGains series on a whim one day out for a hike with my wife. We are both medical educators at a university teaching hospital, and I thought it would be fun to make a YouTube video about climbing hand anatomy. The response has been phenomenal. The GripGains series translates complex physiology principles into actionable knowledge. GripGains 1 covers hand anatomy fundamentals and their training implications. GripGains 2 covered training physiology, the cellular mechanisms driving long-term adaptation. GripGains 3 covered finger flexor mechanics and the critical role of flexor digitorum profundus in particular. GripGains 4 covered the flexor balance between FDS and FDP and how this interaction explains a huge amount of variation in rock climbing performance. The upcoming GripGains 5 will cover thumb anatomy and its relevant training protocols. Finally, GripGains 6 will cover exercise programming from a principles point of view that will allow individuals to build a rational and individualized training system for their own maximal performance. The GripGains series had a beginning and it has an end. The Hand of God series of grippers embody the anatomical and biomechanical principles covered in GripGains 1, 3, and 4. Their revolutionary design reflects years of iterative development under the selective pressures of a high-intensity training protocol. Every ergonomic feature addresses specific biomechanical requirements identified through systemic analysis, testing, and iteration. The Hand of God grippers were evolved, not designed, as I've discussed elsewhere. Getting them to the point that I could offer them to others was an immense undertaking driven by community engagement here on YouTube. Those of you here from the beginning will know that I tried really hard not to sell grippers. I have answered an enormous amount of questions from audience members. People have asked me why I do it. This is the whole point. It's a hobby for me. Audience engagement is the point of publishing videos. One particularly keen and interested viewer named Tristan reached out via email, and we went back and forth in an email exchange that is now over 300 emails. I answered his questions because I like to teach and I like to share. He was an interesting and engaging person. Tristan works in IT, and he began deep diving my training spreadsheet to reverse engineer it. Eventually, we decided to team up and develop an application together. This brings me to today's announcement. GripGains.ca is the digital embodiment of GripGains 2 and GripGains 6. It is a training application that represents the complete systemic approach that I use to break my decade-long plateau. Unlike conventional training apps that function as digital logbooks with generic templates, this application implements my actual training system, a system that is the product of organic evolution, not simple design decisions. Over 10 years, I tracked every single session using increasingly sophisticated spreadsheets that eventually functioned as a complete strength and conditioning coach that analyzed my performance data, prescribed individualized workouts and adaptations. More than even the grippers, the spreadsheet has been the absolute foundation of my success in climbing. The GripGains app implements this entire evolved training protocol into a beautiful, easy-to-use application that anybody can use. All of the complexity is hidden from the user. Simple one-click training sessions. Everything is handled behind the scenes. Let's look at how the application works. You select your emphasis and tell the application your specific training requirements. The next step is an initial assessment. This will construct a starting force curve. Up next, we have the intelligent workouts. Sophisticated mathematical models drive each one-click workout execution. The workouts are automatically generated based on physiology principles and your current individual capacity. After each workout completes, you get workout feedback and metrics at the end of the session. Finally, these metrics are analyzed by the app, and they are used to generate an advanced suite of progress metrics that track your short-term and long-term progress. These are the same carefully evolved metrics that I created over a decade of experimentation and refinement. Everything here was chosen because it was useful in real-world training over a long duration of use. The final step is adaptive refinement. The application takes this data, uses your historical session performance to rebuild the force curve and ensure that every workout that you do will be the hardest workout of your life. The system takes immense behind-the-scenes complexity and provides one-click, easy-to-do workouts. All specific prescriptions, load, duration, volume, are individually based on your continuously refined force curve and metrics. So how do you get access? This application will be available exclusively to Hand of God owners because these components form an integrated system. This application prescribes RPE10 training protocols that require perfect ergonomics for safe execution. Standard training equipment lacks the precise biomechanical features necessary for this intensity of training over the long term. Before people complain, it's simply unethical to recommend this approach to training on standard tools. A Hand of God owner summarized it best in a personal email. Long holds, RPE10, and the Hand of God grippers are literally the secret weapon. This is legitimately the part that stood out to me as the GripGains series progressed. It's the trinity of an ergonomic tool, a hangboard formula that guarantees RPE10, and the force curve that ensures that targeted training creates a system that is far greater than the sum of its parts. I have seen discussions surrounding the Hand of God grippers or the training approach, but conversations miss the symbiotic relationship. True RPE 10 training without the correct tool is flirting with the inevitability of injury, and an ergonomic tool without effort will just lead to stagnation. This integration between the application and the gripper system isn't about exclusivity, it's about training safety and system effectiveness. The components are engineered to function together. Separating the components compromises on both safety and the results. The GripGains training application will be available to Hand of God owners, completing a comprehensive system that addresses both theoretical understanding and practical implementation, breaking through established performance limitations. Sign up with the email that you use to purchase your grippers. When you first start using the application, there is an onboarding process. Your new coach needs to get to know you. Go through the onboarding process, start feeding the app quality data through quality sessions, and then watch the magic happen.